John, thanks for joining us. We're into the last 48 hours of these talks. What's happening and what's the mood?
You know what, I'm so sorry, but it's annoying with the bins.
Okay.
We'll do that again, thanks.
Okay.
Give it a minute. Yeah, go, thanks.
Okay. John, 48 hours to go here at these talks. What's the big news so far?
Well, at the moment, we're not exactly sure, because what's happened now is the ministers are increasingly taking over. The civil servants are briefing their ministers, so everyone's inside, behind closed doors, frantically beginning the ministerial segment, where all the big, difficult decisions get taken. So,
the mood seems relatively quiet here. There wasn't kind of much news coming out yesterday. What's your sense of where the negotiations are really hotting up?
Well, there's two parts. The civil servants have been in, as I say, closed rooms, generally speaking, trying to thrash out the last bits of text. Where they can't reach agreement, they're framing questions for ministers and giving them options. So they'll typically have three options, say, and then the heads of delegation will say to the ministers, go for option 2. Then the ministers get together and squabble over the options.
And how influential do you think the ministers are here? Because I've heard a couple of them say they don't really know what's going on.
Yeah, that's always the case. I mean, so the ministers don't track the process throughout the year. They come for 3 days at the end of the year. So unless they're very well briefed, many of them don't know what they're doing. So it gives an unfair advantage to the big countries, big delegations who do know what's going on, and to ministers who do track the process, which some of them do. So.
And what about the big political issues here? We've heard about this kind of the delicate balance between China and the US and the EU's involvement. How is that playing out?
The EU is generally playing a positive role, although being the EU, it tends not to make spectacular interventions, even when it's meaning very well. So in a way, the EU is leading on greenness, of course, with the alliance of small island states and the least developed countries wanting action most of all. The basic countries who aren't really very coherent, that's Brazil, South Africa, India, China, the big guys, aren't entirely unified. So I think that Brazil and South Africa are probably pushing for a really good deal. China, I think, will too. I mean, it won't be as good as us NGOs hope, but China will. At the moment, India has been the problem. So there's a gradation. And the US is pretty well always the worst of the big guys. Yeah.
And what do you expect to come out in kind of 48 hours' time from here?
I still think we'll get the basic deal that we talked about on the first Monday, which is the second commitment period of the Kyoto Protocol, and an agreement to start on a legally binding treaty after that. A lot depends on how the big developing countries react to the ongoing, the new treaty. In our case, we'd like it by 2015, and they're saying they'd like it by 2020. So it depends how much we can pull them away from 2020 and introduce more ambition. The EU yesterday tabled a very good proposal for increasing ambition, so targets would ratchet up and up and up more rapidly, and we're hoping that will fly, but we're not sure because the US hate it.
This 2015-2020 date, do you think that's going to be a win for campaigners here? Do you think we're going to get the ambition down to 2015?
It's very hard to say, because I think Brazil, South Africa and China might shift. Less sure about India. So, yeah, really don't know on that one, but we're hoping.
What about the USA when it comes to that, the big ambitious date?
The trouble with the US is it's very hard to give it anything, because it's all about trading. So the EU gives the second commitment period of the Kyoto Protocol to the developing countries, and in return they give negotiations on a legally binding treaty. Now the US don't really want a heck of a lot. They say they want a legally binding treaty, but they have no idea when, certainly post 2020. And what they really want is China in an agreement with them. But even there, that's just to get the Congress more on side, so they'll ratify a deal. But it only raises the chances of Congress doing that from about 0 to about 1%. I mean, it's not a big thing for them. So although the administration, thinks climate change is serious, it's all down to the Congress when if you want a new treaty, and the Congress ain't going to do one.
Sobering note to finish on. John, thank you for speaking to us.
Yeah.